Thank you for that. Right, all those in favour? Any opposed? No, thank you. Right, we'll go straight on to item 10, our Thriving Rangatahi, Council's plan to support thriving children and young people. Kia ora. And we have two members of our Youth Advisory Panel as well. So if everyone at the table could introduce themselves at the beginning, and then I think I think we're going to go straight into the conversation, are we? Kia ora, Liz or Caroline.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Caroline Stevens, toko ingoa. I'm a senior policy advisor in the community policy team. To my left, I've got Liz Civil. She's the senior policy manager for community policy. And to my right, I've got Esther O'Donnell, a member of the Youth Advisory Panel, and Sanat Singh, a co-chair of the Youth Advisory Panel. We do have a brief PowerPoint presentation. However, we are happy to forego that just in lieu of time and hand over some of that time to the Youth Advisory Panel who'd like to speak to the item, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot on the agenda. So if we take the report as read, maybe go to our Youth Advisory Panel members, and then if there are any questions, there's also the presentation on Nexus in the attachments.
Perfect. Just to say briefly, we are here seeking adoption of Thriving Rangatahi, Council's commitment and plan to support the well-being of children and young people. A comprehensive review was presented to committee in 2023 of last year, and that was the review of I Am Auckland, Council's former child and youth strategy. The review found that the strategy was not fit for the future, and that Council could do more to better target its support to those children and young people who are facing the greatest barriers to participation. The review findings aligned really closely with Ngā Hapori Momoho, the Council's community wellbeing strategy, and as a result, the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee agreed to nest strategic priorities for children and young people under that strategy. Thriving Rangatahi is the plan that sets out that commitment. We have worked with the Youth Advisory Panel at key stages of development this year and presented the plan to them last month and received their support. And the two members here would like to speak to the item today, so I'll hand that over to them. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm incredibly honoured to be here in support of the Thriving Rangatahi policy. There are so many things that I deeply admire about the way in which the policy was created, especially in how it is aligned with the Youth Advisory Panel's strategic priorities. This feature is truly thoughtful and shows the level of commitment from Mackenzie and Caroline to understand and advocate for the needs of Tamaki Makaurau's youth. The policy provides a clear call to action through accessible language, and the key message of Thriving Rangatahi is that when the youth of Auckland are healthy and well, safe to be ourselves, have a voice, are connected to te taiao, the environment, we can thrive and the world is ours. Thriving Rangatahi recognises the key role that Council plays in all of these aspects of the lives of rangatahi and outlines key levers that could be used. For example, advocating for accessible and reliable public transport, creating youth-led community spaces, civics education and involving youth voice in decision-making. This policy also outlines a much-needed shift in Council's work to being more connected and inclusive. This is a massive opportunity for change here, and I've experienced the limitations of Council's current complex and siloed way of working firsthand, and have found it very hard to engage with as a young person. Thriving Rangatahi recognises the role of community groups and those already on the ground doing the mahi and engaging with young people successfully, emphasising the importance of facilitating, funding and enhancing this vital mahi. Finally, but most importantly, youth voice is woven throughout the policy, truly honouring and doing justice to the communities that it seeks to serve. Thriving Rangatahi is grounded in the aspirations, hopes and dreams of rangatahi in the present and future.
Thank you, Esther. That was very powerful. Even I don't know what to say after that. Kia ora, team PPC. It's really good to be here. I hope you're all looking forward to a well-deserved summer break. Just a big thank you to Caroline and the team at Thriving Rangatahi for putting together this very excellent and comprehensive plan. The engagement with the Youth Advisory Panel has been brilliant over the course of the last year or so. So we really appreciate the fact that council is willing to stick with us, go through the process, stay accountable to it, and deliver something that will really work. Just a couple of words, especially in the spirit of the conversations we've been having in this room today. I think it's always good to reground ourselves in purpose and why it exists, why this plan exists, why does the Youth Advisory Panel exist, why is it so important that council engages with young people? And it isn't just defined by our statutory obligations. It isn't just defined by it's the right thing to do. It's really about the opportunities here for the richness, the diversity, the well-being, the development, and the progress of our communities and our cities. And that's to do with every community, every demographic we engage with. When we think about young people, when we think about young people in our city, there are three big thoughts that come to my head. The first one being that they're living, conscious human beings that populate our communities. They have visions for what they want the world around them to look like, what they want their elected members to do, even though they don't really have a say in who's around this table. And that's important. It's important that we continue to honor that and honor their dreams and their aspirations. Number two, young people aren't monolithic. They aren't all the same. They were represented across the spectrum. We have rainbow young people. We have disabled young people. We don't have senior young people, unfortunately. Yeah, that's, but we have Pacifica young people. We have ethnic young people. It is important that we actively engage and represent them because they are the most acutely deprived or the most acutely victim to the problems that a lot of our demographics and a lot of our communities across the city face, especially because they don't have that representation. They don't have the power to have that say as much as other people do. And number three, that this room, the people that are sitting in these tables are going to change in 20 to 30 years. You guys are stewards for the next generation of leaders that are going to be occupying your seats right now. And so it's pretty important that you are out there engaging with those young people, inspiring them, letting them know that they also have the power to change the world around them and to lead. And I think that the thing that I really take away from this plan is that Thriving Rangatahi is set up to empower this complex and labyrinth organization to finally engage with young people in a comprehensive and accountable way, in a way that will define what the city looks like, not only in the next decade, but for the next 50 years. And so it's incredibly important that we all throw our support behind this, and why the Youth Advisory Panel was more than happy to do that, but that this plan not only just becomes a plan that's on the shelf, but is something as a tool. It's a set of principles and values that is actively incorporated into every step, every speech that you make, every action and every decision that you take in these rooms today. So thank you.
Kia ora, kia ora Sanat, and Esther, really appreciate you both being here. I'll just go to questions just specifically to you both, and then I'll get you to step back so then we can ask questions of officers if there are any. Are there any questions for our Youth Advisory Panel? Mayor Brown.
I've got a fair bit of support for what you're saying, but there's a bit of an absence of up there of teaching basic economics and financial understanding, because that's an important thing. You've got all the things that you want there, but it's all got to come from somewhere or other. And I've employed a lot of young people over the years, and I'm shocked at how little they know about money. So what do you answer to that?
Mayor, that's more of a failure of our public education system more than anything else, really. I mean, you have community groups out there that do quite a good job at teaching young people or trying to teach young people about money and financial management. The scene in our schools is also changing very quickly as well to be more oriented towards essential life skills, something that we tend to lose out on the advent of technology and social media. But I think, you know, this plan is more aspirational, it trickles down, and I think you should just have some faith that young people probably get there, probably understand sooner or later, and a little bit better than a lot of the decision makers that have come in the past as well.
Articulating as you've done with such energy and commitment, I'm just bubbling away with it, so thank you. Hey, paragraph 38, I know this is in the report, but I really wanted to ask you as panel members, there's comment there that young people are experiencing climate anxiety. Can you just tell us, how does that show up? Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to read it, but I'd really like to understand, you know, what are young people really feeling? You know, what's eating them? Because that's a big subject matter, yeah? But how does that show up in daily life, the week, the study place, the home, etc.?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that as someone who at age 10 first learned about climate change, was at the School Strike for Climate age 12, walking down Queen Street. And I think it's such an existential threat that it sort of permeates every part of my life, even now. And like even from small things like being so anxious about taking a shower, because I've got obviously long hair and I need to wash it for a while, and I was like, I can't do this, I'm killing the planet. And it's a really like personal thing, I think, and we all sort of have that personal responsibility. But I guess as I've sort of I wouldn't say I've aged out of it. I continue to be very anxious about climate change, but I guess it's this hope and good faith that our decision makers are listening to us and taking those things on board, and that maybe while I can't change the world personally, that people have my best interests at heart. And I think a lot of that is just good faith. But I think also when that trust is violated, and when you see decision makers continually making decisions that don't take the interests of young people or the community at heart, it's really hard to sort of earn that trust back. And I think that this is what gives me hope, is this policy, is that if we are taking and honouring the views of young people, we can maybe curb some of that anxiety, and that there is hope for the next generation. And I think even though I'm coming here today as a young person, I'm also an advocate on behalf of the next generations, and I really hope that no one has to experience that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. And last question for the panel members, the panel member liaison himself. Councillor Henderson.
Look, it'd be awesome to move this as well, Chair, if you don't mind. But I do have a bit of a queue here. I'm just looking at where is this? Oh my gosh. So anyway, belonging and connection here. One would think that in a social media connected world, then people feel more belonging and more connection than ever before, but actually that's not quite the case, right? Just wondering if you could sort of educate us on maybe some of the challenges that come under that heading, and even what we could look to do about them. Kia ora.
I think it's a complex question, but I think first of all, social media technology probably drives a lot of connection, but also drives a lot of divisiveness as well. It just sort of silos people and keeps them away from each other in very physical terms. But I think it's also a very unique and neat and very convenient excuse to be like, well, you know, they have spaces online to connect, so what's the excuse for having to fund and develop and cater and take care of physical spaces of connection and belonging? Why should we have to create those? We can so easily accomplish that at a very low cost and a very low resource. So to me, it's like connection and belonging for young people has changed rapidly because we are just chronically online now, but also because simultaneously there's not been a concerted effort to build community and build connection. That's an active thing that needs to happen. It's an active relationship that council needs to undertake with the community around it to make sure that young people have spaces and have places where they can be just themselves without the need to change. Yeah.
That's awesome. Look, I don't need to speak, Chair, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming in, and it's a real honour to be working with you as a liaison, and I'm just really proud of all the great work you're doing. Kia ora. Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora, thank you both, and we'll make sure that, could we put a thank you on the resolutions? Councillor Henderson would like to move, and have a seconder, Councillor Ferry. We'll just get Sana Esther to move back so then we can discuss with the officers. Thank you so much. And now questions of officers on the plan itself. Not that you need to ask questions. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, just going through, just a one question really to do with the section on health and well-being for young people, and particularly as it goes to playing, sport and recreation, and services that give young people opportunities to be a bit active. So, and I just want to try and relate that to how that emerges going forward. So change the way we work comes in a bit later, and this notion that one size fits all doesn't work, and we've got to go to targeted approaches. So trying to apply that to open space and sports and all that stuff. So my impression as I travel around Auckland is that most suburbs have got their sports fields, they've got their sports clubs, their recreation centres, whether you're in the poorer parts of Auckland or the wealthier, because all people need to be active. So I'm just curious as to what changing to the targeted approach to activity in sports, recreation, how would that change is really what I'm asking under this new vision.
Kia ora, through the chair. Thank you for your question. I think the targeted and tailored, it's a key shift that you see in Ngā Hapori Momoho. And with regards to parks, sports, open spaces, we know how important they are for physical and mental well-being. And so what this plan does is it asks us to recognize that link, how important it is that we as council have a real role in providing some of those protective factors for physical and mental well-being for children and young people. And what this plan does through Ngā Hapori Momoho is try to make sure that children and young people are a consideration and their well-being is a consideration across all decisions for council. So when we are making some of those open space, when we are planning programs and activities, we want them to be really locally based at a local level because we know the needs differ across Auckland, and that children and young people are considered in all decisions and all planning and program development.
So I guess, with sport, that's implicit, isn't it? If you go building a cricket oval or a rugby or league field, that's largely for young people. I think disproportionately so. So I guess what I'm also keen to know is if, and it's probably maybe not the business of this plan, but will that encourage a bit more creativity in how we supply things? So, for instance, if you look around, one of the most popular things are these little basketball half courts or a little bit of concrete and a hoop. And no matter where you go to in Auckland, no matter what ethnicity, you'll have people playing there of all ages, and you have some good examples overseas of how good that is for the community. So this won't get to that kind of granular level of saying, well, what's other things we could do now that brings that sense of community and gets young people active that we know already work, so that they don't have to think about it. They just need to go out and look at what happens down at Victoria Park or over in Albany or down south. You'll see what really attracts disproportionate to other things. So how do you envisage that type of response coming out of this?
Thank you for the question. I think one of the opportunities by involving children and young people in decision making, for example, in the way we create spaces, is we can get their voice into the design of it. So, what we think might work and what they think might work, there might be some different views there. So the opportunity to sort of work alongside children and young people in the design of those spaces and the sort of activities they want to do, and that could be quite diverse across different communities, as Caroline has mentioned. So I think it's kind of the way that we work with children and young people to kind of get that involvement, get that participation, get their ideas into the way we design a city and the way the city works is a key thing. And that means continuing to do a lot of things we've done that are working really well, but actually saying, are there children who are missing out, who perhaps aren't participating as much as other children or young people, and how could we get them involved, get them participating? And that might require a slightly different approach or a different activity that they're into, So it's thinking about all of those things.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, look, very quick question from a person at the other end of the age spectrum. I've always insisted, and we're finally starting to do it in these papers, a financial implications section. And I've read here that the community strategy, it's in the Thriving Community Strategy, which is as part of does not have a specific budget attached to it, then I always wonder when I read stuff like that, does this create tension and pressure for money to be spent? And if so, why don't we quantify what that would be, or does this not require any extra expenditure on behalf of the council at all?
The working assumption is that it doesn't require any additional, it's about directing the existing resources we've
Okay,
got.
that's good.
That's not to say if there isn't an amazing child and youth initiative that comes up, that couldn't be put forward as part of an LTP process or an
Yeah,
annual plan
but
process
this
or
paper
a-
doesn't create that pressure.
No.
That's the main thing. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Right, that's all the questions. I'll get you both to step back. Thank you very much. We'll just see if there are any points of debate. I feel like it's pretty clear and pretty awesome. Councillor Ferry.
I just wanted to acknowledge the role of the Youth Advisory Panel as the Chief Liaison Councillor for the Advisory Panels, needs a new name, and also the way that they've been enabled and empowered through this process today to be able to be here and have their say in the respectful way that people have dealt with them. This is quite an intimidating environment. I don't know if we always remember that because we sit around the table a lot and we're used to this room, but it is actually very intimidating, particularly to sit over there and present to us. And I really respect the way that our committees are starting to include advisory panels when relevant reports come to us. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you. And also, I did have a question for them, but it was, how are you so awesome? Which is probably not a real question, so I thought I'd hold it back.
It's welcomed, but maybe out of order. Kia ora, there are no more speakers. Yeah, just thanks again to the team and huge amount of work, and this will help encourage more young people to be involved with what council does, whether that's sports, arts, democratic action, the environment. It does help us see the lens of young people, and that's extremely important to all of us, I'm sure. All those in favour? Any opposed? No. I mean, I'm in favour, sorry. Right, we'll go to item... we have a staff member that has had to go to interview for they're interviewing someone for a role, so they will be back after lunch. So we're going to unfortunately skip item 11 for now, and then we'll move to items 12 and 13, which we are taking together. They are two different items. And then we're going to go to lunch after this. So it's our choice.